Welcome, listeners, to Mind Over Matter with your host, Sana. Today, we are diving into the fascinating intersection of health, mindfulness, and long term thinking. And let me introduce to you all our guest, Lisa Franz, a globetrotting digital nomad, health and nutrition coach extraordinaire, and host of the Nutrition and Life podcast. Now, listeners, Lisa has a master's in exercise science, health promotion, and nutrition, and she has guided over 300 clients toward healthier, happier lives. From Colombia to Germany and 53 countries in between, she has mastered the art of balancing indulgence with fitness. Today, she is here on Mind Over Matter to help us understand how mindfulness can revolutionize the way we approach health and fitness. So, everyone, get ready for a lively discussion filled with some practical tips, insightful stories, and maybe even a sprinkle of wanderlust. So, Lisa, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us.
Sana, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
Lisa, your work focuses on long-term mindset for health. So, if you can share your top strategies for developing and maintaining a sustainable health plan.
Yes. So, I mostly work on nutrition with my clients. However, as we know, everything is interlinked when it comes to our health. Nutrition affects how we perform physically, it affects how we show up emotionally with our families and everything else. So, I really try to go about it in a holistic way. And most of my clients, like myself, in the past as well, have struggled with various diets themselves. They always think, I can't eat this, I can't eat carbs, this is bad, I shouldn't have chocolate, and so on, or might try a 6-week detox challenge or whatever it is, something extreme. But then in the end, it always turned out, at least for me and for many of my clients, that I felt restricted. I felt like I couldn't participate in the social life. I couldn't eat my grandma's cake. I couldn't travel the way that I wanted to. And I was very, very frustrated with that until I learned that in the end, it comes down to energy balance. And once we have a better understanding of the portions that we should be eating and a better understanding of what those portions should consist of in terms of protein, carbs, and fats, and what kind of distribution, it's actually quite easy to fit in some fun foods from time to time, to have some bread and also focus on the vegetables sometimes. But it's all about the balance in the end. And so that's really what I try to teach my clients and our listeners now also, in the sense of, okay, number one, let's get rid of all or nothing thinking. Let's get rid of demonizing certain foods and saying this is good, this is bad. Food doesn't have moral value. Food is just sometimes more nutritious in the sense of micronutrients and the energy we get from it. And sometimes it's a little bit less. But in the end, if we balance it out, we can have some of everything, and we don't need to feel guilty if we treat ourselves to something from time to time. So that's really tip number one. And with that, and especially at this time of the year, we are recording this just before Christmas or before the New Year. So a lot of people might be going through some holiday celebrations and so on. And then they also, with that, usually set some crazy challenges for the new year. And I think when it comes to our health, we think way too short term often. We think about, okay, what do I want my weight to be when I go on summer vacation? What do I want my weight to be in a month's time? I don't want to feel this fluffy anymore. But we don't really think about it in, is the way that I'm going about it sustainable? And can I maintain that for not just a few weeks, but can I maintain the way of eating and the habits that come with it for the next 5, 10, 20, heck, 40 years? Because my goal for my clients is that they are still healthy and happy when they're 70, 80 and beyond, and that they can be physically active. So I think we often think way too short term. And if we give ourselves more time, we can actually work on habits slower, which sounds a little bit boring, but it makes it a lot more realistic that these habits are actually going to stick. So the more aggressive we usually go about it, the less likely it usually is that they're actually going to stick. So that's probably the second thing that I would encourage people to think of and that I try to teach is long-term strategic thinking. And the first one was getting rid of all or nothing thinking, getting rid of moral judgment when it comes to food. And if we combine the two, we really end up with wonderful habits and kind of this 80-20 approach is what I call it. So 80% of the time, we really do want to be focusing on the high quality foods. We want to eat our vegetables. We want to eat our healthy protein sources, some fruit, some nuts, some seeds, those kinds of things. But then the 20% of the time, we can treat ourselves to something. And the same applies to other habits. Let's say your sleep. We know by now that sleep is so important, not just for weight loss, but overall mental health, emotional health, and everything else. But there will be days where you want to celebrate a little bit longer with your family or where you're going to a concert and it's just feeding your emotional soul. And that's fine. We don't need to beat ourselves up if on that night we only get 5 hours of sleep. But the 80% of the time we should be aiming for 7 to 8 hours or even more of sleep. And that's kind of where, again, people underestimate the importance in terms of long-term success. And even if we just build on, hey, let's increase our sleep time by 20 minutes this month, and then the next month, let's see that we can get another 10 minutes and so on. And the same, of course, applies to exercise as well. We don't need to do any crazy challenges. We don't need to aim to work out 6-7 days per week. But if we are consistent with 3 kind of workouts per week, moderate intensity without getting injured on the other days, going for walks or maybe doing some yoga or something that brings our nervous system down, then we can be really, really successful and healthy long term.
Those are some really, really great, very, very relatable, insights. Because first of all, we need to approach health and fitness with self-compassion. Not a process of punishing ourselves, but more from a compassionate perspective. Secondly, I loved how non-polarizing you are towards food. Bad foods. We always we demonize a few food, but definitely there has to be some balance for a consistent and a long-term success, not just a short-term one. So some
Yes.
great insights, Lisa. Also, I feel that, all these insights, since you have been a digital nomad traveling to over 50 countries, 50 countries, it's very, very much obvious. And I want to ask, how have you managed to stay consistent with your health and nutrition goals on the go? Because, you know, traveling outside, it gets really very tough to control the kind of food we eat or the portion sizes, and that too, across so many countries and cultures.
That's a wonderful question. And I think even though most people are not going to be traveling as much as I do, but nonetheless, most people might travel a little bit for work or again over holidays or so to visit family as well. And so I hope that some of my insights are helpful for that as well. And the same that I was saying earlier in regards to weight loss and so on kind of applies here as well. So I try to focus on some non-negotiable basics most of the time, meaning I look out for a hotel where I know I can still prioritize my sleep. Of course, sometimes it's inevitable that there is a night flight or that we're having a time change and that's affecting the sleep. But nonetheless, I then make sure that the next day or when I arrive, I go for a walk, I get some fresh air, I stay hydrated and all these things. Sometimes we feel so crappy after we arrive somewhere and we just want that extra energy. And so we go for the sugary thing and then we add some more caffeine and then we add alcohol and it just makes it worse and worse and worse and worse. And so instead of layering things like that on top of each other, I try to think, okay, how can I enjoy my time here wherever I'm traveling? How can I enjoy some of the local culture and some of the foods that perhaps are unique here, but a little bit higher in calories and so on? And there, the point of planning and preparation is really so important. And that's a point that we can take into our day-to-day lives as well. I would say the most successful people that manage to maintain a healthy lifestyle long term, they are generally the people that are best prepared in most situations in life. And that doesn't mean that you need to eat out of a Tupperware container nine all the time, basically, and that you have to be super strict. I just mean a little bit of foresight goes a long way. So, for example, when I travel, I do pack my supplements with me. And while supplements are not everything, especially when we're traveling, they can be helpful. They can help us deal with the stress better. And they can make up a little bit for, let's say, if the food quality is a little bit lower. Or when I do travel, then I also see that, hey, maybe I can find a hotel that has at least a small gym with it. Or if it doesn't, then maybe I can find a gym nearby. And I still stick with these routines so that then the rest of the day I feel a lot better. And once again, we get into this all or nothing thinking where we think, oh, I'm on vacation or I'm traveling. I'll just start back up when I get back home. And I mean, while it's fine if you go on vacation once a year, by all means, give yourself a break. That's totally fine. But if you are traveling frequently, or if it's a travel that's not necessarily pleasure related and it's more kind of like an obligation for something, then I would say, hey, let's see that you can stick with these things that make your body feel good, because it's going to make your mind feel better, and then you're going to enjoy the rest of the day a lot better. So yeah, that would be really a big tip, to have foresight in the sense of, where am I going? Is there maybe a supermarket nearby as well, where I can buy some basic things that I might be able to prepare myself instead of eating all meals outside? Is there a gym nearby, and so on? And then on top of that, just really thinking about your non-negotiables that you still want to maintain even when you're away.
Wow. Wow. Really exciting to know how you manage that, Lisa. Also, when we talk about mindfulness and health, they're often talked about separately. Mindfulness is more of connected with personal growth or development, or a kind of a catalyst to help with the journey of self-awareness. So, why do you think mindfulness is overlooked in health and fitness, and how do you incorporate it into your coaching?
I love that question, and I truly agree that unfortunately it's often rated or undervalued and not spoken about enough. But particularly when it comes to eating, so much of why we are consuming higher calories these days is linked to us just shoving it down and, for lack of a better word, and eating too quickly and not really paying attention to how full we are or what our body really needs. So sometimes we do hear about like intuitive eating and those kind of things, but in my opinion, that's kind of different from mindful eating. So mindful eating, in my opinion, is more, okay, am I actually hungry right now? Yes or no? Am I just eating because there's food in front of me? And the Japanese have a wonderful kind of what do you call it? Like a strategy where they say we aim to eat until we're 80%
Yeah.
satiated or full, but not 100%. So always kind of stopping before you get there. And unfortunately, if we eat so fast, we don't really, the satiation signal doesn't set in time for us to recognize at 80%, hey, we should stop. So literally, simply eating slower, and it doesn't have to be that you need it 250 times or 100 times, but just, for instance, making sure you're eating undistracted, not eating while you're watching a TV show or anything like that. Like, if you eat with other people, try to focus on the conversation, try to focus on, even if you're just eating on your own, try to focus on the environment and on slowing down. And I know that that is really tough, especially during the day. I have so many clients that always say, oh, I barely have time to eat anything throughout the day. I just eat at my desk really, really quickly. And if at all possible, I really encourage people to at least take 5 minutes for themselves. And I hope that everyone's employer is kind of a supportive of that you can then afterwards regress to your work in a more replenished and a fulfilled state when you actually take an actual break. So I would recommend not eating in front of your laptop or or desktop. And even just taking like 3 deep breaths before you start eating, that can kind of bring us into the moment and slow down or get us out of that sympathetic acting switched on state into a more rest and digest kind of state where our body is actually more receptive to the food and processing the food a lot better as well. So that would be part number one. And then there's of course some other mindfulness techniques or mindful eating techniques that are a little bit more strained perhaps. So people sometimes even say eating with your non-dominant hand. So if you switch your fork into, if you normally eat with the right hand and you switch the fork into the left hand, you're automatically going to eat slower. If you put your fork down between bites, you're going to eat slower. And even just before we go back for seconds or before we then go for dessert afterwards, taking a break in between and just asking yourself really, do I need or want that more anymore? Or have I had enough? So that can be really some strategies. And when it comes to the aspect of fitness or activity as well, mindfulness really is important there also. So first of all, if we want to, of course, it depends on the exercise, but let's say we want to shape our body a little bit more and we're doing some kind of strength training, we're in the gym. So instead of already focusing on, oh, what do I need to buy for dinner? What am I going to do once I get home? Blah, blah, blah. Be in the moment. Your body and your soul deserves to just be in that moment, in that time. Put on a nice playlist. You're going to notice that you walk out of the gym so much happier if you were just where your feet are in that moment instead of already thinking ahead and just rushing through your workout. And more than that, your muscles actually notice that you don't pay as much attention. So you're probably not going to use as much weight or you're not pushing yourself as hard. And again, like you deserve that. That's 3 hours out of the week that you can use and for not just connecting with your body, but also just being in that zone, in your zone. And I'm such a big fan of things like going for a walk every day, even if, especially after your meals, it helps with blood sugar regulation as well. And with so many other things. And if we're just present in those moments and almost force ourselves to not use our devices throughout that time, which I know I will be the first one to admit that that's difficult. But if, putting on a nice podcast like this one and just going for a walk and literally just doing that, not texting at the same time, not writing your grocery list at the same time, trying to multitask less, in my opinion, that's kind of the definition almost of mindfulness, just less multitasking and really just being with what you're doing in that moment.
Oh, wow. Great, great, Lisa. Some great takeaways for our listeners, from you. And also you mentioned about nutritional periodization, which sounds kind of intriguing. So can you explain how this works and why it's a key to keeping hormones and metabolism in check?
Yes, absolutely. And like you say, nutritional periodization, that's a mouthful. And most people don't know what does that actually mean? But it really just means going about your physique, your body goals in a logical, in a long-term way. So meaning most people say, I want to lose weight. Maybe they even have a particular number in mind, but that's kind of the extent of their quote unquote plan. So the first recommendation that I always have, and that's part of nutritional periodization, is establishing, right, how much weight do I actually have to lose? If I have any weight to lose, and this can be transferred over to muscle gain or whatever also. And then with that, what is a realistic number that I can lose per week? And how long does that mean the whole diet should take? So of course, it's very different if someone has 50 pounds to lose. I might recommend, hey, let's do that in 2 stances because 50 pounds, I normally don't aim for much more than about a pound per week with my clients in order for the weight to actually stay off afterwards. So, we're looking at about a year in total, and that's a long time for one person. So I usually say, let's aim for 4 months, and then we're taking a maintenance break, and then another 4 months, and then you need to give your body and your mind the chance to catch up with what you're doing. If you just try to knuckle it through, you're going to notice, well, okay, I wanted to go on vacation, and then there is the holidays and all of that. How does that fit in? So if we allow ourselves more time, we can spread it out a little bit more and increase the chances that it's going to last. But that's really only one aspect. The bigger aspect is that even once people get to their goal, if they get to their goal, that's kind of where their plan ends. They just say, okay, I've reached my goal. And either they then go back to what or how they were eating before the diet, or they just say, I just want to eat intuitively. And during this time, unfortunately, intuitive eating right after a diet does not work because your body wants you to gain the weight back. Your body's main goal is just for you to survive. And so it actually didn't really want you to lose the weight. Some extra body fat is just kind of like a security blanket for your body. And therefore, after a diet, it's going to send you all the hunger signals so that you actually put weight back on, sometimes even more than you had before. That's one reason why I say right after a diet, this is almost where we need to be most careful and cautious because it's the chances that we regain the weight are so high if we don't do it properly. And so if instead of simply listening to your hunger signals or simply going back to the previous way of eating, we slowly but steadily increase the calories again, because of course, during our dieting phase, we were in a calorie deficit, meaning you were eating less than what your body is burning. So now we want to slowly bring that back up where the calories that you take in are the same that what you're burning. And if we do that slowly, progressively, let's just say we add 150, 200 calories a week. We monitor your weight in order to see that it actually is kind of staying the same, or we're maintaining your goals. And then we're teaching your body to burn more again, to take better care of the hormones again, to restore your metabolic health, because as we diet, all of that sort of suffers. So that's called a reverse diet. And then once we get to the maintenance level, that's obviously, that's just called maintenance. But the other mistake that I see people make is that once they get to their end goal, they are so afraid of adding more food again because they think, well, this worked, so I just need to stay at very low calories. And that doesn't work for a long amount of time because eventually your body, your hormones are going to suffer from that. Your sleep is going to suffer from that. Your metabolism is going to adapt to that. So that also means that if in the future you ever want to diet again, you need to drop your calories even lower. And at some point, it's like, this doesn't work anymore. So we reach a place which is called metabolic adaptation. And that's a whole other story where we also need to do a reverse diet and a longer maintenance period. But essentially, not just staying at low calories is certainly not the solution either. So we also, in this case, need to go through a reverse diet. And then, as I was saying, the great thing is once we get to the maintenance place, most people think, okay, there's no value in having a nutrition coach or really focusing on nutrition if they just want to maintain their weight. And in my opinion, that's actually really not true because there are still so many things we can optimize, even if we're happy with our body weight. We can still optimize our body fat percentage. We can still optimize our hormones. There's always, in my opinion, is something someone can do better. Myself included, I've been working on this all my life, but even more so, of course, since I have found my love for nutrition coaching, but still there's always things to improve. So that's kind of what's meant by nutritional periodization if we think about it in not just the diet, but what's after the diet and how are we maintaining and how are we continuing to improve our body over the years. And like I was saying, this can also be done with muscle gaining phases. And for the female listeners here, I do also want to encourage you to think about muscle gaining phases, not just as something for men, but also for yourself. If you, for instance, have posture, working on our backs, or if you want a nicer shaped butt, for instance, that's also something to think about. And in order to be successful with that, we don't just need the right training program. We also need the right diet and give it the right amount of time. And of course, that's where our mind, as in the theme of this podcast, is so important that we really give ourselves the time to grow there and be patient with whatever goal we set ourselves out to do.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's really interesting to know how you connected mindfulness and nutrition and health. So anyway, thank you so much, Lisa, for this conversation, enlightening conversation. If our listeners they want to get in touch with you and explore more about your coaching and your podcast as well, how they can do that.
Well, Sana, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and you asked such wonderful questions. So my Instagram handle, and that's usually where I'm most active, is Nutrition Coaching in Life, and that's also the name of the company. You can find the same website, and the name of the podcast is the Nutrition and Life podcast. And if you are listening to this and this is resonating with you, or you enjoyed the conversation, I would absolutely love to just have a message from you. Just simply drop me a few lines saying, "Hey, I listened to you on the Mind Over Matters podcast." And I always like hearing where people find me or connect with me. And yeah, thank you so much, Sana.
Great, great, Lisa. We'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes. And listeners, what an enlightening conversation we had with Lisa Franz. From practical strategies to sprinkle mindfulness into our health routines, on tips on how to indulge guilt-free. Lisa has truly shown us how to balance the best of both worlds. So if you are ready to take control of your health without giving up on the things you love, Lisa is your go-to expert. So check out her Nutrition and Life podcast for more inspiration. Until next time, this is your host, Sana, reminding you that small mindful steps today can lead to transformative health tomorrow. Thank you.